Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about something that probably I get hit with more than anything. People that come up to the farm, people that email me, people that have seen our videos, and that is probably the biggest question in the goat and sheep community is fencing. So this video is going to be in two parts. I'm going to video here and tell you a little bit about the fencing that we use, and then I'm going to go to a buddy's house that has another type of fencing that people use and let you see that, and I'm going to give the pros and cons of each. So I've got my notes here because I always seem to forget something. This is a 48-inch red brand field fence. Okay, this is what I use on all of our perimeter fencing. Okay, now I want to reiterate again, I said perimeter fencing because a lot of people talk about the expense of this fence and how expensive it is. Okay, this is around all of my pastures. Okay, and I have 4 pastures that are broken up into different sizes. I've got, 10 acre, 4 acre, a 2 and a 3, something of that nature. Anyway, what I like about this is it's a 10 gauge at the top. Now, if you don't know much about fencing, the smaller the size, the bigger the wire. So it's got a strong 10 gauge at the top. Down here at the bottom, it has another 10 gauge. Okay, so anything wanting to get dug up underneath, it's not going to give in easily. Okay, so 10 gauge at the bottom. All of this in the middle is 12.5. Again, red brand, 48 inch, 10 gauge at the top, 10 gauge at the bottom, 12.5 in the middle. I like that because if there's going to be 2 weak spots, it's going to be the top and the bottom. I really like the fact that it's bigger at the bottom, the 10 gauge. Another thing that you will notice with this is you've got a large square at the top, and as you go down, they get smaller. So down here at the bottom, it's a tiny little gap. Okay, tiny little gap, tiny little gap. That's really nice too for predators, so you don't have to worry about that. Another thing that's great about this fence is I do spray, and you can see I spray my vinegar down, but you don't have to spray on this. I do it really for aesthetics more than anything. Sometimes we get this sage grass that comes in here. We need to put down some lime, but sometimes this comes up and it clogs up, and I leave it like that. So what are the pros about having this fence vice, let's say a high tensile, which is the other favorite? Number one, you don't have to spray. Number two, there's no electricity. Okay, so as I'll talk about a little bit later, what do you do if you have electric fence up and the electricity goes out? Let's say you've got this hooked up to a mount where you can have it, and you lose electricity and you're out. Not only do you have to worry about the animals getting out, you have to worry about the predators getting in. Number three, there are no escapes. I've never, 20 years, I've never had an animal escape from this. Okay. A couple things to know about this is these are 330-foot rolls. Okay, I think at the time, now don't hold me to this because things fluctuate with this crazy world we're in, but this was about $150 for 330 feet. I've got my 4x4s in the main pasture here. I do have 4x4s because that's what everybody comes up, and we wanted to put the 4x4s in for aesthetics. But normally what I would do is I'm going to run on a corner post. I'm going to go about 100 feet, and then I'm going to put in a 4x4. Then I'm going to go another 100 feet. I'm going to put in a 4x4. And then by the time I get to the other 100 feet, it's time for me to brace in an H brace. We do that. The poles here, when you do green poles instead of the brown 4x4s, 10 feet apart. And that's what I've got these. Okay, I'm 6'1". They're 10 feet apart. I like them 10 feet apart because a lot of times your goats, and you'll see they like to lean like this and walk on the fence. You want to have them 10 feet apart. Okay, now here's a big kicker that I want to talk to you about is if you look closely, I'm going to try not to get shocked because I am an idiot. Right here, you can see that I have got a 14 gauge tensile wire, and I've got these plastic gauges on here. And you're gonna say, okay, Lann, you've just said you don't need electricity. Okay, I use this for my paddocks. Okay, so I can clip my paddock, my poly braid on here. Okay, and then I can just take an alligator clip and clip it on there, clip it to my charger, and I'm gone. I only put this electric line, and here's the beauty of this fence, on one side of the pasture. Okay, so with the high tensile that you'll see later on in the video, you're running miles and miles and miles and miles of electric fencing, which means, you know, people say this is more expensive. You'll hear later in the video, when you're running a ton of this wire and you've got 4 or 5 lines of this, you're paying more for a higher end energizer, whether it be solar or regular. You have to pay more for that. With this, rain, shine, sleet, snow, electric, no electric, you know, tree falls over power line, you're out for a week, whatever, I will never be worried about animals getting in, animals getting out. This wire right here is 18 inches off the ground, and I use it for 2 purposes. I use it, number 1, for nothing more than when I break up my paddocks like I just mentioned, and number 2, you have a goat. This is my goat or sheep imitation, mainly goats. When they get on here and they start leaning up against this fence to get the fur off, this is going to deter them. That's it, okay? So this one line is that, but you're saving a ton of money because you're not running a lot of high tensile wire, okay? Now let's go to my buddy's house. I'm going to show you a little bit what he does, which is another type of fence called high tensile, and that's going to be something else that people use, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Thanks. Hey, here we are. I'm at a friend's house, and I asked him if I could come over and take a look at the fence that we have. So this is what a friend of mine has, and if you can't tell, he's got cows. And this is great for cows. This is great for horses. But here's what I talk about and why I don't like this. He's got a strand here, and this, I don't know if you can see it with the shadow, but this is a poly braid or poly wire. He's got a high tensile, a poly wire, a high tensile, high tensile, high tensile. So a lot of people will say that this is cheaper to have. And I'm sure that if you're doing something with cows or horses, it is. But I want you to look at this, okay? You've got your poles like you do the field fence in the first part of the video I showed you. But you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 insulators, and this is widely spaced per tube. That's a lot of insulators. Another thing is this. These cows are not going to be bothered at all by a little dog. If you live somewhere, let's say you have a neighbor that has a Chihuahua, something small like that. I want you to look at the space between here, okay? A small dog can get right up underneath here, and a coyote or a dog that really wants your cow will get underneath there too, okay? So again, not gonna bother this girl right here, okay? She's not gonna be bothered by a little tiny dog, but a sheep or a goat would. You're gonna have to constantly keep this sprayed as well, okay? So going back to the benefits of this, I think if you're gonna have and you wanna look at something long-term on bigger animals, this is great fence. I have nothing against it. I would not feel comfortable putting any of my sheep or any of my goats in here. Now, you'll have people that will say, you know, a pro to this fence is you can put a Pyrenees dog in here. But when you want to talk about this being cheaper up front, number 1, I don't see where it's cheaper. Number 2, if you do decide to do this and you get a Pyrenees dog, that's another mouth to feed. Pyrenees, I think, are about $500 a piece. So right up front, you're trying to save money on fence, but you're having to invest in a dog. And if you have a dog, I have friends that have guardian dogs, but here's the things that they tell me. You know, you're spending a lot for the dog. Number 2, about every 2 weeks, they're not small dogs, you're going to get in a 50-pound bag of Oroy or Science Diet or whatever you want to feed that dog with. Number 3, sheep and goats are a lot different than a cow, okay? You want to have an animal, or the animals, the sheep and goats, they want to be petted. So are you going to be comfortable bringing a child into your pasture to pet your livestock that a dog that is there to protect the animals has never seen before? I'm not going to take that risk. And I'm sure there's not, you know, a large amount of cases out there. It doesn't matter. One incident is more than I want. So I'm not bringing a dog into a pasture to protect animals and then have children as they come to our farm to see the animals and have them worried about getting bit by the dog. But I did want to show you, this is the biggest thing, that this is one piece of the fence that a lot of people ask about running. I will never use this at all. Thank you.